Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are examining intense reports emerging from the Ukraine-Russia conflict, centered on claims that more than 1,000 Ukrainian soldiers were killed and large amounts of artillery were destroyed within a single 24-hour period during Russian attacks. These figures are being circulated through official Russian military briefings and affiliated media, and they represent one side of a fast-moving information war that runs parallel to the fighting on the ground. In modern conflicts, numbers move faster than verified facts, so it is important to understand not only what is being claimed, but also why such claims are made and how they fit into the broader strategic picture. According to Russian statements, the reported losses occurred across multiple fronts, suggesting coordinated strikes rather than a single isolated engagement. The emphasis on a 24-hour timeframe is significant because it creates a sense of momentum and dominance, portraying the attacks as overwhelming and decisive. Russian briefings often highlight daily casualty figures to reinforce the idea that their military operations are grinding down Ukrainian resistance at a steady pace. Ukraine, on the other hand, rarely confirms such figures and frequently disputes them, arguing that Russian numbers are exaggerated for psychological and political impact. This contrast in narratives is a defining feature of the war, where information itself has become a weapon used to influence domestic audiences and international observers. Artillery destruction is another key part of these claims, because artillery has been central to this conflict from the very beginning. Both sides rely heavily on long-range guns, rocket systems, and howitzers to shape the battlefield before ground troops move. If artillery is truly being destroyed at the scale claimed, it would suggest a serious degradation of Ukraine's ability to hold defensive lines or launch counter-battery fire. Russian sources describe precision strikes using missiles, drones, and guided artillery to locate and neutralize Ukrainian gun positions. These strikes are often presented as evidence of improved targeting capabilities and better coordination between reconnaissance units and strike assets. Drones, in particular, are frequently mentioned as playing a decisive role in identifying artillery positions hidden near tree lines, buildings, or civilian infrastructure. From the Russian perspective, destroying artillery is not just about eliminating weapons, but about breaking the rhythm of Ukrainian operations. Artillery allows Ukraine to slow advances, inflict losses, and maintain pressure along contested sectors, so neutralizing it could shift the balance in localized areas. However, Ukraine has repeatedly demonstrated an ability to replace lost equipment through a combination of domestic production, repairs, and Western military aid. This raises questions about how lasting the impact of such reported destruction would actually be over time. Casualty figures like the claim of 1,090 soldiers killed in a day are especially difficult to verify independently. In wartime, exact numbers are often unavailable until long after the fighting has moved on, and even then they remain contested. High casualty figures are commonly used to signal success and to undermine the morale of the opposing side. For domestic audiences, such numbers can reinforce confidence in leadership and military strategy. For international audiences, they can be intended to discourage continued support for the enemy by suggesting that resistance is futile. Ukraine's leadership has consistently emphasized resilience, adaptability, and the willingness of its forces to continue fighting despite heavy losses. They argue that Russian claims underestimate Ukrainian defensive successes and overstate Russian effectiveness. The reality on the ground is likely more complex, involving intense fighting, localized gains and losses, and significant casualties on both sides. The focus on a single day of fighting can also be misleading, because it removes events from their broader operational context. Battles in this war often involve days or weeks of preparation, probing attacks, and attritional exchanges before any clear outcome emerges. By isolating a 24-hour window, reports can create a dramatic snapshot that may not reflect longer-term trends. Artillery battles, in particular, are cumulative, with effectiveness measured over sustained periods rather than isolated strikes. Another factor to consider is the role of weather, terrain, and seasonal conditions in shaping these reported outcomes. Mud, snow, or frozen ground can dramatically affect mobility, visibility, and the ability to reposition artillery units. Russian reports may highlight moments when conditions favor their forces, while downplaying periods of stagnation or setbacks. Ukraine similarly emphasizes moments of success to maintain morale and international support. This constant competition over narrative control makes it challenging for outside observers to draw firm conclusions from daily figures alone. International analysts often caution against taking any single report at face value, regardless of the source. Instead, they look for patterns over time, corroboration from multiple independent sources, and observable changes on the battlefield. Satellite imagery, intercepted communications, and open-source intelligence can sometimes confirm equipment losses, but personnel casualties remain far harder to verify. The human cost behind these numbers is often lost in the strategic framing of such reports. Each reported casualty represents an individual with a family, a community, and a life interrupted or ended by war. When figures are presented as daily tallies, they can become abstract, reducing human suffering to statistics. This abstraction can make it easier for governments to justify continued fighting and harder for audiences to fully grasp the scale of loss. The destruction of artillery also has implications for civilian areas, as artillery duels frequently occur near towns and villages. Counter-battery fire can lead to shelling of surrounding areas, causing damage to homes, infrastructure, and essential services. Claims of successful strikes may not always distinguish clearly between military targets and the broader impact on nearby civilian zones. International humanitarian organizations continue to warn about the long-term consequences of sustained artillery warfare in populated regions. From a strategic standpoint, Russia's emphasis on high Ukrainian casualties aligns with its broader goal of wearing down Ukrainian manpower. Ukraine, with a smaller population base than Russia, faces long-term challenges in sustaining losses if they occur at the scale claimed. However, Ukraine has also implemented rotation systems, mobilization measures, and training programs to maintain force effectiveness. Western support has played a significant role in providing not just equipment, but also training and intelligence. This external assistance complicates any simple calculation of losses versus gains. Even if artillery pieces are destroyed, replacements may arrive, sometimes with improved capabilities compared to older systems. The psychological dimension of these reports is also critical. For Ukrainian soldiers at the front, hearing claims of massive losses can be demoralizing if believed, but it can also harden resolve if seen as propaganda. For Russian soldiers, such reports can boost confidence and reinforce the belief that their sacrifices are producing results. Information campaigns are therefore closely linked to troop morale on both sides. Social media amplifies this effect, spreading claims rapidly and often without context. Short clips, headlines, and infographics can make complex military situations appear simple and decisive. This environment favors dramatic numbers and clear winners, even when the reality is uncertain and fluid. The international reaction to such claims varies depending on political alignment and media framing. Allies of Ukraine tend to downplay or question Russian figures, while countries sympathetic to Russia may repeat them more uncritically. Neutral observers often adopt cautious language, emphasizing that claims cannot be independently verified. This divergence in interpretation contributes to a fragmented global understanding of the conflict. The claim of destroying artillery within 24 hours also raises questions about sustainability. Precision strikes require intelligence, munitions, and logistical support, all of which can be strained over time. Russia has significant resources, but it also faces challenges related to sanctions, supply chains, and battlefield losses. Ukraine, despite being under constant pressure, has shown an ability to adapt tactically and technologically. This adaptability suggests that even severe losses may not translate into immediate strategic collapse. Historically, wars characterized by heavy artillery use tend to become wars of attrition. In such conflicts, victory is often determined not by single days of fighting, but by who can endure longer and adapt faster. Daily casualty claims can therefore be misleading indicators of eventual outcomes. They may reflect intensity rather than effectiveness, and violence rather than progress. Understanding this helps place reports like these into a more realistic analytical frame. Another important aspect is the credibility of sources. Military briefings are designed to present events in a way that supports strategic objectives. They are not neutral reports, and they rarely include admissions of failure or uncertainty. This does not mean all claims are false, but it does mean they should be approached critically. Independent journalism and monitoring organizations attempt to bridge this gap, but access to front lines is limited and dangerous. As a result, much of what the world sees is filtered through official channels. The focus on numbers also obscures other important dimensions of the war. Logistics, morale, command structure, and political will are often more decisive than raw casualty figures. A force can suffer heavy losses and still maintain cohesion and effectiveness if these other elements remain strong. Conversely, a force with fewer losses can falter if leadership and morale break down. When examining claims of 1,090 soldiers killed in a single day, it is also worth considering historical precedents. Such high daily casualties are not unprecedented in major conflicts, but they usually occur during large-scale offensives or defensive collapses. If such events were happening repeatedly, they would likely be reflected in visible territorial changes. The absence of dramatic shifts on the map suggests that the situation may be more balanced and contested. Artillery destruction claims similarly need to be evaluated against observable changes in fire intensity. If artillery losses were truly crippling, one would expect a noticeable reduction in shelling or changes in tactics. Reports from the front indicate continued heavy artillery use by both sides, suggesting ongoing replacement and adaptation. This again points to the limitations of using short-term figures to judge long-term impact. The emotional power of large numbers should not be underestimated. They capture attention, drive headlines, and shape public opinion far more effectively than nuanced analysis. This is why they are such a common feature of wartime communication. For viewers and readers, recognizing this dynamic is an important step toward more informed understanding. Ultimately, the claim of 1,090 Ukrainian soldiers killed and significant artillery destroyed in 24 hours is part of a broader narrative battle. It reflects not only what may have happened on the ground, but also what each side wants the world to believe. Separating these two elements is challenging, but necessary for anyone seeking clarity. As the conflict continues, similar claims will likely keep emerging, each demanding careful scrutiny. The true cost of the war will only become fully clear long after the fighting ends. Until then, numbers should be seen as indicators of intensity rather than definitive measures of success. What remains undeniable is that the war continues to exact a heavy toll on soldiers and civilians alike. Behind every statistic lies a human story shaped by fear, loss, and uncertainty. Understanding that reality helps move beyond headlines and closer to the deeper truth of the conflict. That deeper truth is not just about who loses more in a single day, but about how long the violence continues and at what cost. As events unfold, maintaining a critical and compassionate perspective is more important than ever. This approach allows us to engage with the information without becoming captive to it. And it reminds us that beyond claims and counterclaims, the human consequences remain the most important measure of all.